I thought I understood women until I married Nikki. I thought I encouraged women until I had Vera as a daughter. I thought I loved women until I had Thea as a daughter. And then I stopped thinking I knew anything, and I had Petra. Women are the most incredible gift God has given the human race. They don't struggle with arrogance, cockiness, always. But women are the most incredible gift God has given the human race. They add depth, passion, care, love, sensitivity, and more. They help give meaning to a world that often spins around seeking new ways of destroying itself. We're going to be studying Sarah this morning, and oftentimes this is how Sarah is viewed by those who glance through her story. And I think oftentimes by guys who have not been blessed with daughters. So let's be honest. This is a blog I found. Let's be honest, there are times in the biblical account when Sarah comes off as a bit of a shrew. She was the wife of the great patriarch Abraham, so we tend to think of her with a degree of dignity and honor. Let's boost up Abraham, because he never made any mistakes, did he? But reading the biblical account of her life, it is impossible not to notice that she sometimes behaved badly. She could throw fits and tantrums. She knew how to be manipulative. And she was ever known to get mean. At one time or another, she exemplified almost every trait associated with the typical caricature of a childish woman. She could be impatient, temperamental, conniving, cantankerous, cruel, flighty, pouty, jealous, erratic, unreasonable, a whiner or complainer, or even a nag. By no means was she always the perfect model of godly grace and meekness. It sure leaves a sour taste in your mouth, doesn't it? I want to write this guy and say, you. There's one. Sorry for you that you can't see the fact that she was struggling in a land with a promise of God that is, especially a woman in her time would have really had a hard time with. See, when I started studying this passage, I came to a realization that my wife and daughters have added a depth to my understanding of Scripture that I don't think I ever would have realized. And just a confession, people come up to me, so you're going to keep trying to have kids until you get a boy? Like the boy is suddenly going to make me happier? I can't be happier. I have 3 daughters. They give me all the hugs I can ever get. And my daughter can beat up most boys out there on the soccer field anyway, so. So instead of viewing Sarah through the lens of a guy, I began to see the depth of her struggles in an unforgiving, brutal world. Women during this time were completely dependent upon the happiness and reliability of their husbands. The husbands made the money. The husbands made the decisions. The only real good that women served was ultimately in childbearing. There was no such things as retirement plans. It depended upon male children to inherit the riches and the wealth, and they would be able to provide for the parents. The more male children, the more likely the parents would be provided for as they aged and were unable to work. If she could not have children, it was rarely, if ever, his fault. She was considered a failure at life. She doomed her family because, well, now we have no kids. We don't even have daughters. We're just going to, we'll just die as soon as our possessions are gone. The cultural pressures and expectations would be crippling to a young woman, for whatever reason, unable to have children. The pressure would just get worse as time went on. And I'm hoping today that we will no longer look at Sarah through the lens of pity or of judgment, but we will look at Sarah through the lens of the legacy that God left for her. We're going to see what happens when God wrote her story. And I like a couple of the characters that we have already studied, Abraham and Ishmael and Lot. I think that's all of them so far we studied. We're going to be bouncing around a little bit, trying to get a full picture of this individual. And so turn to Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12, the beginning of the story. And we're going to begin to go through the life of Sarah. So we're going to be slowly moving through the scripture, but we're in Genesis chapter 12 to begin with. Genesis chapter 12. Verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." We're very familiar with this. We've hit on it every single week so far. The Abrahamic covenant that guides our understanding of the life of Abraham and his family. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram from Sarai, his wife, Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go forth to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, etc., etc., etc. Now, I want you to imagine this conversation. So Abraham comes in. He's a little older, in age, and so is she. And they're sitting there at breakfast. And, after they're drinking a couple cups of coffee, Abraham says, "Hey, my sugar pumpkin, we got to talk." "Yes." "Well, my honeybee, you're not going to believe this." "Oh, I believe everything you say. You can tell me." "Well, God, the Almighty ruler of the heavens and the earth, told me he's going to make me a great nation, and we need to move." This is probably just about the time she's taken a swig of coffee. And "Abraham, how many times have I told you you cannot start drinking in the morning? Come on, crazy talk. God saw you? God talked to you? What's next?" Could you imagine that conversation? I would just really imagine it. Imagine if your husband comes in now. "Dear, we gotta move." "Why is that?" "God talked to me." Just imagine that conversation going over nicely. Maybe it did. Probably it did not. See, her first point is that God does the unexpected and takes you places that you never dreamed. See, when God wrote Sarah's story, he did the unexpected. And he took her places she didn't even think she'd be going this in life. God does the unexpected. God used Abram in the midst of Sarah's life to say, "Hey, we've got to move. God has a plan for us." Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but we need to do this. And so she got up and she moved with him. Really sounds like that cantankerous, woman that we saw earlier. But she got up and she went. Up and moved. Left her family, left her friends, left the connections that she had built in her community. She probably had quite a bit of influence there. Abraham was pretty wealthy when he left. And had to up and leave. And now she will be at the whim of whatever happens to Abraham out there in a foreign land that was not known for its hospitality. God does the unexpected. Now, I look at this about up and moving and God working in a way, and you'll see how this plays out in Sarah's life, but oftentimes in our story, God puts us on a path that we never thought we were on originally. He does things in our past to give us training for things in the future. I don't know how many times I've talked to people and it's happened to where you're like, oh, that's why I went through that back there. I'm now able to do this. See, my wife, Nikki, in 6th grade, she was asked to help a young girl with Down syndrome. And she helped this young girl, and they had fun nicknames with each other, and she was able to help and to minister to this young girl and help her to benefit and to get a lot out of church. She was just randomly asked to do this. Where years went by, and she served at camp and the church in various places. Well, she ended up going to Faith Baptist Bible College in Iowa, where she met me. That was unexpected, let me tell you. All right, so she worked at Faith Baptist Bible College in Iowa, and after that, she became a senior autism associate at a place called the Homestead. Little did she know her experience here would be paving the way for where she was at that moment. Nikki, while at the Homestead, meets another lady by the name of Randy, who was going to be a doula, and some other childbirthing expert or something. And as a result of their interaction at work, they talked about childbirth, and got Nikki thinking about, the variety of things there. And Randy then ended up moving. And Nikki and I ended up moving to Colorado. Well, just so happened that Randy ended up in Denver, Colorado, and we ended up in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And it just so happened that Nikki got pregnant with Vera, and Nikki asked if Randy would be her doula. Well, that's interesting. Keep going. Randy helped Nikki with Vera. Vera is born. Happy times. Vera's awesome. And then we move again. And Rachel Apiahi asks Nikki for support and encouragement with the birth of Asher. So Nikki helps Rachel. Nikki loves it. Nikki becomes a doula. She wanted me to mention her website, and I forgot it. Sorry, Nikki. We talk a lot, Nikki, on Facebook. There we go, okay. So if you should check it out, her website is nikkipopedoula.com. Is this an advertisement? Yes! She is awesome. Yours doesn't even count. nikkipopedoula.com. You should check it out. She's put a lot of work into it. But now she works as a doula. Who knew? Way back in 6th grade, somebody would ask her to take care of one kid. As a result of taking that, helping her, she then ended up she is so patient with people. She lives with me. You got to be pretty patient to do that. And she's patient there, and she ends up working with children with autism, where she meets somebody else who ends up in doula services and helping with mothers and the childbirth and everything. Nikki ends up doing that, ends up loving it. See, God takes people and bring them in unexpected directions and does amazing things with them. God does this. He does the unexpected and takes you places. That's the first point. When God wrote Sarah's story, God took her from Ur into the land of Canaan, where her story it gets interesting. So a little bit later in Genesis chapter 12, verse 11, we're very familiar with this. We talked about Abraham. So Abraham goes into Egypt, and he tells Sarai, his wife, I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me. But they will let you live. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. And when Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And for her sake, he dealt well with Abram, and he had sheep, oxen, donkeys, male servants, female servants, etc., etc. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abraham's wife. Then Abraham, as we know later, runs into a Philistine king by the name of Abimelech in Genesis chapter 12. This is all stuff we talked about last week, but he runs into Abimelech, the king, and the same thing happens. Abimelech sees Sarah, takes Sarah, adds Sarah to his harem, because Abimelech also realized that Sarah was very, very, very pretty. Now, so we track this. So, chapter 12, verse 11. I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance. The Egyptians saw that the woman was beautiful. They praised her beauty to Pharaoh. Abimelech saw she was beautiful and took her into her harem. How often are women treated as visual objects of pleasure for men? Too much is right. How much do women view each other through the lens of physical appearance and beauty? Just as bad. It hasn't changed. This isn't new. Everyone's talking about how, oh man, our kids are being bombarded with it. Same thing's going on. The only thing they saw Sarah for, she was beautiful. They didn't even care about her. They just thought she was hot. Even Abraham treated her like just hot candy, which doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And he just handed his wife over to pagan, wicked men. All because he was spineless. See, men and women oftentimes, they look at each other and all they see is physical appearance. And what happens when we get older? That's right. And that's it. All right, ladies, you got your physical appearance, and can you have babies? See, men and women oftentimes do not see how much women are worth. And God, when he wrote her story, saw her worth. See, God saw how much Sarah was worth. Because if you look at Genesis chapter 12, and look at verse 17. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. Who cared about Sarah? The Lord did. When God writes your story, ladies, he sees your amazing worth. Genesis chapter 20, account of Abimelech. Whole thing played out where Abraham had to confess Yeah, I was scared, and so I handed my wife off to random men to save my skin. In verse 16, she's vindicated in the eyes, Genesis 20:16. She is finally vindicated for the garbage that she had to walk through by being Abraham's wife, because this happened in every single place that they went. It says to Sarah, he said, behold, I have given your brother 1,000 brother, also husband, 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated. It says, then Abraham prayed to God, Verse 18, for the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. God sees your value, ladies. He knows how important you are, and he fights for you. Abraham did not care about her feelings as a woman. He just handed her off, treated her like a piece of property. Men, your wives are not your property. Stop treating them like that. I am sick and tired watching Christian men treat their Christian wives like they are something, they're some pleasure object, that they are some piece of property there to please you. Men, your job is to value your wife like God values them. You serve them. Your wives are strong, and they have to deal with you every single day. And that takes way more strength than you can imagine, because men were stupid. See, God steps in and proves and shows the value of Sarah. And ladies, he values you. And I have seen how, even with my 6-year-old daughter, how destructive women are already to each other. I mean, she had her nails painted. They were just cute. And other girls already turned their nose up at her. Men become jerks a little later. They do. Men become jerks later. But women, they start off right off the get-go, just thrashing each other. I think I was amazed at that, because guys can knock heads. We can get a full-out fist fight right here in the pew of the church, and next week we're fine. Just what we do. But women, they are brutal to each other. And sometimes as a result of other women, and sometimes they're incredibly brutally honest with themselves. They are so brutally honest about themselves, they look at themselves and they see no value. They see themselves as worthless, hopeless. They see themselves as not able to accomplish anything or do anything. But God sees you, and he knows how valuable you are. And he loves you, and he's serving you. And if any dingbat ever treats my daughter with disrespect, I'm going to tell you as a pastor, I'm going to kick their butt. Just so you know. I'm going to cut that out of the YouTube video so that doesn't show up online. So if you ever see me in jail, it's most likely because of that. Just. Third point. He builds your story. Genesis chapter 17, verse 15. God oftentimes, would spend a considerable amount of time re-clarifying and explaining the promise he gave to Abraham. And he does this powerful thing where you might have noticed that sometimes her name is Sarai, and sometimes her name is Sarah, and sometimes Abram is Abram, and sometimes he's Abraham. And I used to just think, man, God was just confusing there, and he maybe it's a translational issue. So I started reading it and started actually paying attention to what the Bible was saying. Go figure. And he says in Genesis chapter 17, verse 15, and he says, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. So I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of people shall come from her. What's really fun about this verse, and it's really instrumental, I think, in our understanding of Sarah. See, God builds your story. And here he does a very specific name change. Sarai means princess. Sarah means princess. All right, God, what were you thinking? Because they mean the exact same thing. If you look at Hebrew, then pretty much all you see are consonants, and people are like, we don't really know what's different about this. You can go on a lot of sites, you can try, and people are still trying to wrestle with what the significance of it is. And so you have verse 16, I will bless her, I will give you a son by her, I will bless her, and she shall become nations, kings of peoples shall come from her. So verse 16, make note of, and then go back a couple of verses to Genesis chapter 17, verse 5, and this is what he does to Abram. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. So see how he changed Abram to Abraham, Sarai to Sarah? There's significance there in that you are not just going to be a guy, you are going to be the father of many nations. Sarah, you are no longer going to be just a Disney princess, you are going to be the ruler of nations. That's sort of neat. You're not just a Disney princess anymore. I see your value. I'm building your story. You are going to be the mother of nations. So her name was no longer princess. It was princess. Something a little more, as I say, it's big and strong. I mean, it's like you're no longer the cute Cinderella. Oh, I just went blank on her name. Who is the evil person on Sleeping Beauty? Yes! Now, not that she's, okay, not like women you turn evil or something, but she was powerful as a character. You're no longer Cinderella, you're like Maleficent. Like call forth dragons. I mean, you're awesome. God is building your story. He's building your story in ways you cannot imagine. And he shows us this in one little verse. I am no longer going to call you Sarai. You were Sarah because I'm building your story. And you are going to be the mom of nations and kings. They will know who you are. God is building your story. Number 4, he is not limited by your insecurities, but God is the answer to them. God is not limited by your insecurities. He is the answer to them. Look at Genesis chapter 18. I think turn page. Genesis chapter 18, verse 10 says, the Lord said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. And Sarah was listening at the tent behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, after I am worn out and my Lord is old, I shall have pleasure. And the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. Now, this is that, to give you a description of Genesis chapter 18. So this is where God and some angels are walking in. Abraham sees them, rushes out, greets them, and you have that interesting conversation where God's like, I don't know if I should tell Abraham about Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. And so he decides to tell Abraham, and Abraham pleads and begs, for mercy on Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, just before that, God gives this proclamation, and he's outside the tent, and Sarah's in the tent, and she's listening, because as wives, we have never eavesdropped on a phone conversation of our husbands ever. We know you're listening. And so she listens, and this guy says, next year, Sarah's going to have a child. Look at me. I am old. Definitely not having kids now. And God makes this nice statement. Is anything too hard for the Lord? You just underline that verse a couple of times in your Bible, circle it, star it. In Genesis 21, the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised, and Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of the son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God has commanded. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children, yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Now remember at the beginning, childbearing and physical appearance were so often the only things that ladies had a value. This is the only thing they could bring to the bargaining table, so to speak. And as she got older, her looks would have begun to fade. And as she got older, her ability to bear children would also naturally diminish. Her value culturally was diminishing every single year. Could you imagine the insecurity she felt, and the pressure she felt, and the hopelessness she felt? Realizing that God had made this awesome promise to Abraham, and I think she loved Abraham. I mean, to be around with him for that long, you had something. But to be along for that long and just think, Abraham's supposed to have a nation that requires children. They're not happening. There's some frustration there. And as we know, she acted out. She acted out in some pretty wild, crazy ways. Ladies, have you ever acted out in a crazy way that didn't make sense a little later? Never. So she acts out. And in her reasoning and what was going on, she had handed Hagar to Abraham. She realized that was a giant mistake. And so she had to deal with now the insecurity there. One insecurity led to other insecurities, led to other frustrations, led to more hopelessness, because she kept trying to do it herself. But that line is anything too hard for the Lord? It's a line that we can remember. See, God is not limited by your inabilities, by what you think you can or cannot do. When we realize we can't do it, that is that is God's perfect place for you because then he can do great things through you. God is not limited by our insecurities. He excels in overcoming them. Nothing is too difficult for the Lord. And so, ladies, if you have found yourself, for whatever reason, in a place of hopelessness or frustration, not having any idea what's going to happen next, God values you. He's building your story. He's going to take you in unexpected directions to do crazy and amazing things. He is not limited by what you can or cannot do, by what your body can or cannot do, by what society says you can or cannot do. You're going to mess up along the way. You will doubt. You will act out. You will wake up some mornings completely different people than the last morning. But God is not limited. He's going to use you. He has a plan for you.